Jess Wilson is an internationally acclaimed keynote speaker who inspires audiences to live with energy, lead with love, and get back in the driver's seat of their health. With a powerful stage presence and a gripping personal story, she has impacted tens of thousands of people worldwide, helping them reclaim their vitality and step into their joy. Her keynotes span motivation, mental and physical health, and personal development, blending evidence-based insights and real-world relatability. I'm so excited to have the beautiful Jess Wilson on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for this conversation. I feel like it's been years in the making because I know a little bit about your personal story. I think we caught up for like breakfast or coffee or something.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, near the beach. And you shared with me the story of your children and how you advocated for their health. And so I think that that's such a powerful story. So I'd love for you to share that.
Definitely. Well, the way that I always start this story is me as a child. I was growing up in South Africa, had a strong single mother who raised me, but we were very poor, and you'll relate to this. We had no money. My mum was a hippie. She grew her own veggies. She baked her own bread. She drove a VW Beetle. And so I had this kind of really good grassroots introduction to healthy living, because back then, convenience food was the expensive stuff. So we didn't really have access to any of that. My mum was a strong, resilient woman. My whole life, though, I was a high achiever, go, 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 give, give, give. And back then, I think we really didn't have an understanding of what that really does to the body and the mind when we're stuck in that lane 24/7. So I was this classic high achiever. And I always say to people, you know, the thing about being a high achiever or having a lot of success is that you feel validated through that. It becomes an identity. Right? So the more you do and the more you get validated for how much you do, the more you do. And so burnout and those sorts of things don't really come into play. And through my 20s, I'd moved to New Zealand and was doing what everybody did in their 20s. I was having a really good time. And when I had my first son, I was 30. So I had my two boys just over a year apart, and my whole world imploded. Because one of the things that you don't realize when you have children is that you might not get a healthy one. We don't have a right to that. And it's not something that you think about. And I was given these two boys over the space of a year that I realized that they were very, very sick. And we spent 5 years in the medical system trying to get answers for them. The boys had 18 surgeries in 2 years. And at every single turn, I was told, you're a neurotic mother. This is normal. All babies get sick. There's nothing wrong with your children. And all I had was a gut instinct that something was wrong with my babies. And so I found myself in this war with the system because I didn't have a qualification. I didn't have any scientific evidence to back that up. I didn't have a lot of support. So I felt like I was in this movie where it was just me versus the world. But I knew, like as a mum, as a woman, we know things, right? And through the course of that journey, I just kept advocating for them. I would turn up to the emergency department. We would get sent back home. I would have to call the ambulance to come and pick up one of my boys because they weren't breathing. And I just kept asking questions. And I think it's interesting because you and I were talking about standards just before. It's what is the standard that you are prepared to accept for your health, for your story, for your body? And I remember looking at my boys and just thinking, this is not how this goes. I'm not prepared to accept what I'm being told. And that's all I had. And so I just continued to fight and fight and fight. And through that journey, my own health deteriorated. I wasn't getting any sleep, 3 hours a night. Obviously, it was a lot of trauma, a lot of medical trauma, a lot of stress. And my mindset deteriorated. But I always say to people, in every hero's journey or in every heroine's journey, you hit the bottom of the barrel at some point, whatever that looks like, that rock bottom. And all you need is just an ember, just a spark, just an ember of something to hang on to. And that's what I had. And it was just a gut instinct. And after all of that time, I flew down to Perth with the boys and I sought out a specialist that I had been asking to see for years. And it's called medical gaslighting. There's a term for it now, right? And I was pushed back. And I paid $1,000 for one consult to see her. And I was desperate at that point. The boys had undergone major gastric surgery. They'd had to learn to eat again for 6 months after that surgery. And I was still being told this was normal. And when I saw her, I'm nearly done with the story, but I sat in her waiting room with my 2 sick babies, all of us crying. My youngest son had vomited all over me and I had taken my shirt off. I was that desperate that I was sitting in this doctor's waiting room in my underwear, not even realizing, because I was at that point, from a mental health perspective. And when she came out, I think at that point she wasn't a doctor. She wasn't a specialist. She was just a woman. And she saw something and she listened to me and she said, we're going to order some really routine blood tests for the boys to check their immune systems. And she called me 2 days later and said, your boys have been diagnosed with a rare genetic immune disease. They are very, very sick and we need to begin them on treatment straight away.
Wow, that's unreal. I want to go back to your story because it was just, this is the second time I've heard it and it still hits me as a mother, right? So what was presenting for your children? Like when you're at home and you're like, okay, it's time to go to bed. Like what were the symptoms that you're like, something is not right. I need to get the boys help.
Definitely. So I think the obvious sickness of things like breathing difficulties, respiratory infections. I had a lot of gastrointestinal stuff, a lot of gut issues, a lot of bloating, just a general unsettled nature. I don't know what it's like to hold a calm baby.
Wow.
So I could feel the tension in their bodies. They wouldn't settle. They wouldn't sleep. There was a lot of reflux, so a lot of vomiting, a lot of reflux, a lot of breathing difficulties. But I think in general, it was the sense that they just weren't settled.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. Like as a mother, you know when your child is uncomfortable. Anyone can say whatever they want, but you know. And so I find it wild that the medical system was like, oh, like they're fine. This is normal. How is this normal? And just to your point that you said at the beginning about when you have children, you don't think about, is my child going to be healthy? You just expect it. And, we've been really fortunate with our 2 and pregnant with my 3rd. It crosses my mind so much just because I've heard these stories, right, of other mothers who they're doing all the right things. You said that you were very earthy, let's say, right? You're natural. And you always have been, and that's how you were raised. And so it's not like you were pumping anything into your children that was unhealthy, yet this is how your children were presenting. And that just goes to show that sometimes children are not presenting or unhealthy because something the parents are doing. It's literally something that's happening inside of their little bodies. And the parents are doing everything they can to figure out what is going on with their child. And it would be so frustrating to feel unheard.
Absolutely.
And gaslighted.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a saying that says 99% of the time people just want to be heard. And it was interesting because after that, the boys got help. I went on my own journey to study and to give back. It's the whole reason why I do what I do, is to give this message back to people and to teach what I learned through that journey. But I went on a journey of forgiveness because the medical system is very flawed. That gray area where there's a lot of time required and a lot of mental bandwidth and a lot of thinking, and it's quite complex and we don't really know what it is, there's no real facility for that. So if you go to the emergency department and you've broken your leg, we have an incredible medical system for that. And if you get an infection and you need a script for antibiotics and you go to the GP, we have a great system for that, the kind of pill to the ill system. But for complex human health, we don't have that. And I think you're 100% right. We don't know what's going on in their bodies and it's complex. But I will say, and this can be I might just forewarn people, it's a little triggering, but I encourage people to really sit with this. I take full responsibility for how sick my boys were born. And every time I say that, people say, oh my God, Jess, it's not your fault. There was nothing you could have done. And I say, hang on. Responsibility is very empowering. So I don't blame myself. There's a difference between responsibility and blame. One will empower you and one will keep you stuck, right? I don't blame myself. But when I look back over the way that I treated my body, leading into those years where I started trying for a baby. Now, I'm not suggesting that that was the reason, but as a contributing factor, we have to take responsibility for the health of our generations moving forward. And that starts with the way we treat our bodies before we have babies.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said that. That speaks to me so much because I have the same philosophy in that, of course, I would never blame a mother for anything that's happening to her child. But I think the most empowered woman goes, what was my role in this? And I don't have a story like that in terms of like my health, but in terms of a relationship, I was in a really bad relationship and, the man did a lot of bad things and, I could have been angry. I could have been all the things. But speaking into the forgiveness, I chose to forgive and then also take radical responsibility.
That's exactly.
Because I'm not saying that I created his behavior. He was going to behave that way. However, where did I not have the boundaries? Where did I not see the red flags? Where did I self-abandon to make him happy? Like, I played a role in that. And for as long as we don't take responsibility, we will always be the victim. So I love what you said because I totally agree.
It's in every single situation, in every adverse journey. It's not just about the gift in the adversity. It's about the role and the responsibility and what can I do moving forward to make sure that that never happens again. So to me, and I say the same about food when I really went on the path of nutrition and starting to feed myself better, feed the boys better, everything was about empowerment. It was something that I could be doing at home. I wasn't waiting for the medical system. I wasn't waiting for anyone. And the same, I think, is said for self-development and responsibility, is we can be so afraid of change and self-reflection and doing the work. But it's so empowering because you then get to set a new pathway for making sure that that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I totally agree. And
if you're brave enough.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I see this with, women that want to be coached. They want to create change and improve their lives. But a lot of the time it's, let me rehash what's happened in the past. Let me blame my father, my husband, my whoever, and not taking that responsibility. If you don't take the responsibility, you're just going to perpetuate more of the same. You're going to create more of the story. You're going to end up dating the same guy, different face. And that's the power in taking that responsibility. What did I do? How did I contribute to this? However small. And like you said, you might have not really done anything. It might have not even been a factor that played a role, but it's you having that insight to be, what could I have done differently to change this? Because then you have that new perspective moving forward and you're coming from this empowered place. I love that.
Absolutely. And I call it a forwards thinking mindset. Instead of a backwards, if you think like the mind is a rubber band. And when we're stuck in blame and victimhood and thinking about what we don't want. We know this in the law of manifestation and attraction, right? When thinking about all of that, it's going to keep us from getting to where we want to go. We're going to stay stuck in that journey. So for me, the point of forgiveness was the 0 point, right? And then the responsibility and the action and the lessons and everything that I've done from that point has allowed us to go forward and to heal, not just on a physical level, because the boys are doing amazingly now, but as a human being, I've learned so much through that journey. It was such a gift. But if I hadn't have been brave enough to take that responsibility on my own, that radical responsibility, like you said, I would still be stuck. They would still be stuck. The system would still be stuck. You know, so it's so impactful when we can be brave enough to do it.
That's so incredible. So once you had this woman give you a diagnosis and say, like, this is what's happening, did the medical system kind of come on board from there of like, okay, this is now we know how to treat them? Like, what were the next steps after that?
A complete pivot.
Wow.
We received a formal apology from the healthcare department, and everyone just kind of sat up and took notice. And that was another really critical moment for me, because I could have been very angry and very resentful. We had a lot of trauma, but we needed everyone to come together for the sake of these boys. And so we got help from the medical system. And at the same time, again, with responsibility, I didn't just put all of my eggs in that basket and go, well, you did us wrong, you go and fix it now. I went, that's great that we've got their help, their treatment, their assistance. What can I do to support that? And that's where my business was born, my nutrition journey was born, my speaking journey was, I need to take all of this. I need to support the boys at home in terms of our holistic practices. I need to look after myself because I now have a divine responsibility to take what we've learned and go and do something with it. And so I think from there, it was like these two worlds came together where I forgave the system and we worked together. But at the same time, I did everything that I could to help to get the boys better, but also to do something with their story. As that legacy for them. I always wanted them to know that your diagnosis is not your destiny. And so they'll always remember that everything that they went through, 18 unnecessary surgeries that they went through, pain, trauma, suffering, the impact that has made on the world now, I hope that they'll remember that. Do you know what I mean?
They will. Oh my gosh. I think it's so empowering because you're right. It's like someone can go through what you went through, and there'd be thousands of people that have gone through that and would have been, oh my gosh, we finally navigated through that, if they do get out positively on the other end, right? Some people just continue to suffer not knowing what's wrong. But let's say there's a resolution and it's, okay, this is what it is. Now we have a game plan moving forward. But they don't use that challenge and that adversity to teach and to spread the message of empowerment, right? And I think that's where your story is different and why it's so powerful, because there's other mothers who can listen to this and be like, oh, I do feel that there is something not quite right with my children, and the medical system is telling me that they're absolutely fine. And not in defense of the medical system, but just in understanding how a system works, they would have neurotic mothers who are exaggerating and who are maybe even causing pain, unfortunately, to their children, love the attention of having the medical system, affirming to them that sometimes people get significance from the drama, right? So they would have put you in that basket.
Absolutely.
Oh, this is just a very neurotic, worried, anxious woman, not knowing that you're fully being guided by your intuition, just knowing that something is not right with your kids. And I think that that's, really powerful part of your story is that you're able to navigate through all that, forgive the medical system, say, okay, we're partners in this now. And now your boys are thriving.
Absolutely thriving. And I feel so blessed. I feel like, and not because not everybody gets that, you know, with illness. Not all children have the outcome that my boys have had, but they really are that miracle story, both discharged from the medical system now, thriving at high school, just the most incredible human beings. I will say that you were talking earlier about that point of change and working with the medical system. Through that journey and everything that I took moving forward also really forced me to reevaluate the rest of my life and how we wanted to live. And I talk so much about joy. Joy is above health for me. It's everything, right? And it really forced me to reevaluate re-experiencing life through the lens of joy. And health is a big part of that, because when you have energy and you're healthy and you feel amazing, like joy comes a lot more naturally. But then I had to do the real work. I left my marriage, started my business, and went on that journey of self-development to go, I want to strip myself of everything that I know that is not serving me, so that the boys and I can live the highest expression of the second chance that we've been given. And that's where the standards come in, but before that, it's the work, right? So I think forgiving the medical system, going on the journey of nutrition, all of that was a huge part of it. That would have got them healthy. But to me, there was still more than that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I love that you said that joy is more important than health, because from an emotional perspective, your frequency, your emotion, what you're feeling right now is impacting your health, right? So it's one is impacting the other. And I also see people who are very health conscious and they're miserable because they're so obsessed with making the right decision that they're not even living everything. It's almost coming from a fear. You can be so focused on health that you're living in fear. And I think that that's obviously not helpful. And then the other distinction, and I'd love your opinion on this too, is I don't want people to confuse, because I know what you mean by joy. I don't want people to confuse, well, what do you mean? Of course, I'm living from joy. Like, I'm going to have the chocolate cake because that makes me feel joyful. How would you talk to somebody about that? Because I hear that a lot, like YOLO, and I'm like, I just can't, especially in my pregnancy, right? People are like, go ahead, like, just eat it. I'm like, I can't. Like, yes, I have that craving. I was saying to Dan the other day that one of the things I'm most proud of in this pregnancy is that I haven't had the waffles from, is it Gelari? So I smell them going to the shopping center when I go to like Boost or something, getting a juice or something. And the smell, and normally I'm just like, oh, that smells nice. But in my pregnancy, that smell has been so like, oh my goodness, with a scoop of ice cream. I have not once had it. I can't remember the last time that I've had it. But the reason is because, yes, it will make me feel good in this moment. I'll feel like satiated. But I just know how my brain works, and like that was not a net positive for my body. So I'd love for you to speak into if someone were to say like, yeah, Jess, I live from joy. I just, pizza every night, fast food.
This is such a great topic. I actually talk about this in my keynotes. Let's put them into two boxes, okay? So let's talk about happiness, and then let's talk about fulfillment, right? They are different. And I really want to go into this. I'm so excited about this because on a hormonal level in the body, happiness is fueled by dopamine. Now, the woke culture has really taught us that happiness is an inside job and you've got to find your own happiness and tap into your own happiness. And it's somewhat true, but a piece of chocolate cake probably going to make you pretty happy for a period of time. You can get happiness externally, but happiness is a short-term emotion fueled by dopamine, right? 9 times out of 10. And I think there's a bit of confusion between happiness and joy, right? So what we think is happiness. So happiness fueled by dopamine, short-term satisfaction, and it is something that we can go and chase. If I go for a walk along the coast in the sun and get a coffee, I feel happy, right? Does that then last for the rest of the day? Does that then translate into when something goes wrong in my day? How does that affect my emotional state if I'm always relying on happiness? So the other box that we look at is fulfillment, right? Fulfillment is longer term, and that's fueled by serotonin in the body. So it's a longer term release. And when we look at a life that, and this is where joy sits, right? Because when we look at a life of purpose, a life of meaning, a life of fulfillment, and what is fulfillment? It's our health and how we feel in our body. It's our relationships, right? It's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's the company that we keep. It's the purpose that we live, the work that we do, right? Fulfillment. Is fulfillment always happy? No. Sometimes it's work, sometimes it's hard. But joy, which is also, by the way, a hormone in the body, oxytocin is the joy hormone, right? All of that sits much more in that longer term box of fulfillment. So I think this is such a deep reflective piece for people to really ask themselves if they are living from joy and true fulfillment, which comes from facing the fire, doing the work, and cultivating the life that they really want, that I really want, versus happiness, which can come in fleeting moments. And we keep chasing more of it. I see this in my teenage son, right? They're dopamine seekers, right? His screens and its friends and its bikes and it's this and it's sugar and it's, right? It's not necessarily joy or satisfaction or fulfillment. Do you know what I mean?
I love that distinction so much. And I feel like a lot of what we talk about, and I'm sure like whether in our coaching containers and when we speak, are so aligned because I talk about the same thing and the way that I say it is fulfillment versus gratification, right? So the fulfillment is what you're speaking about, the serotonin, the more longer term, and the gratification is that dopamine. And we're already hit with so much of that through social media. I even see it in myself. If I'm scrolling for a while, I can feel that like in the moment, it's like that happiness, this is kind of exciting, but that wears down. And then your baseline after that experience is actually dipped, right? So it's these instant gratification moments, i.e. eating the thing, having the drink, not doing the harder thing, that I think in the long term makes us less happy, the thing that we actually want. So I agree with you so much with that because so many people do say that, but it's just a pizza or it's just this. And I like to look at things how they compound over time. And if you give in, let's say, or if you indulge in the pizza and maybe like the McDonald's or whatever, I'm going to guess it's not a one-time thing. I'm going to guess you're doing that once a week, once every couple of weeks. It's that compounding effect. One burger isn't going to change your life, change your energy. But I notice when I'm not eating as well, like the way I feel in my body, I feel more sluggish. I notice my skin texture is different. I just know emotionally, and I feel very lucky to have experienced those dips because I feel like I'm vigilant. And so I won't let myself get to a point where, because some people say, I woke up and looked in the mirror. I'm sure you've heard this before, coaching people. And it's almost like I didn't know the woman that I was. And it's because they weren't present and aware in the moment that they were saying yes to things that weren't serving their highest vision, that led them down this path to looking in the mirror. And all of a sudden we're in this toxic relationship. All of a sudden we're in this body that feels very lethargic and just like not vibrant. And all of those, the end result things of when you make these it's what we were talking about before. We were talking about decisions. Everything is in these little micro decisions.
Totally.
Right. So it's just, the burger now. It's just like another glass of wine for today. But that becomes your standard.
The standards. Absolutely. I talk about it in the sense of the alarm clock. People go, how do I get consistent with my morning routine? How do you get up at 5 a.m. every single day, Jess, and exercise? It's not about the exercise. It's not about the movement. It's not even about the old, tip of putting your shoes by the front door. It's about setting your alarm clock at the exact same time every single morning and never snoozing no matter what. That's where it starts.
I love that. It's so true.
So for us, like for my partner and I, it wouldn't matter where we are in the world traveling. The discipline of the morning ritual is the same. The leniency comes in what you do. Maybe you just go for a walk. Maybe you stretch on your yoga mat. Maybe you go and do an intense workout like I did this morning. So the leniency comes after the discipline.
Love that.
Even looking at, you and I were talking about, as women and men, I don't want to polarize women at all, but where did we abandon these standards, right? And when you look at it and go, yeah, you're eating the pizza or the McDonald's once a week, or you're drinking too much. We all know the things that we're doing for our health that are not serving us. We don't need a coach to tell us that. We all know, right? But then if you also look at how long is it taking, no judgment because this happens to me, but I just want to be careful there, but how long is it taking you to fold the laundry? Do you wipe down the bench every time?
I love this.
Right?
This
Do you
is so
have,
good.
and this is a work on for me because over the last 2 years, I've had a bit of lack of clarity with certain areas of my life, particularly business, and I noticed. Right? So I'm human too. I teach this, but I noticed also it's not just the way you eat and your exercise. It's every other area. You're leaving your bills until the last minute to pay them. Like you'll be all over this. You'll teach people this. But it's those subconscious messages that every single time we say yes when we mean no, every single time we snooze our alarm clock, every single time we eat that thing when we know that that is the thing that makes us bloat, and we eat it anyway, every time we do it, we send that message to the subconscious that says, you are not worthy.
Amen. Absolutely.
But we don't know. And this is this exciting piece that if we can grasp how the subconscious works, we don't know how much we're speaking to our subconscious every day, every micro moment, every thought, every action, every decision.
Yeah, I love that. You're speaking to my soul because I agree with everything that you said. And, when Jess and I are talking about this, we're not saying like what you're doing isn't good enough. But at the same time, we need to cut through the BS as well. And we need to call you out on things like, for example, like the laundry thing. Like, is it there for like a week? How long are you leaving it there? It's these little things. It's how you do one thing typically is how you do everything. Do you leave everything to the last minute? What is that signal that your brain is picking up on? From that, is it that I'm lazy, that I'm sloppy, that I'm not organized? And then you will say these things out loud because my clients will sometimes say to me, oh, I'm just so like scattered and I'm just always so behind. And it's going back to what you said. Okay, so tell me about your morning. What do you do? Do you make your bed? Like the fact that people don't make their beds. I'm like, that is like the tiniest, smallest win that you can do. It's making your bed and having that as the first thing like you can like tick off, whether it's doing your gratitudes. I do my gratitudes in my bed before I get up out of bed. That's like a standard for me. But just, and I also love that you said you set your alarm regardless of where you are. That boundary is in place. That standard is there. What you do after can be negotiable, but the one non-negotiable is how you start your day. And I think that is super powerful.
It really is. I talk about it as an anchor, and both are the feminine, right? So what we do after is intuitively tapping into our body. Where am I at today? How am I feeling? What do I need? And we work with that. So we're not necessarily going and doing a HIIT session and 4 coffees and not eating until lunchtime. It depends on how we're feeling, but the boundary is there. And I loved how you were talking about that, because then, and I speak from my own experience in relationships, have been my biggest teacher, and I have the most beautiful man in my space that I have worked so hard, and I feel so blessed and so lucky, but I have had to go to the depths of all of these small things in order to have this beautiful conscious relationship. And when we look at all of these things and then we look at the other areas of our life and go, why am I not showing up to the gym? Why am I not speaking up for my needs in relationships? What's wrong with me? And coming back to those micro habits, the body and the brain love discipline, love routine, love structure, love boundaries, but it's almost like we have to relearn it.
That's so true. Just on your relationship for a second, because it's such an area that I'm passionate about.
And you've taught me so much in this space.
I love that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that you were able to attract what you were able to attract, though, is because you looked at what you had, and so many women would have been like, but I've made a commitment, but we made vows, but I need to try a little harder, but my kids. And that was an instant, a life-changing instant where you chose yourself and you said, this is not for me. I am willing to go it alone and go into the uncertainty of becoming a single mom than staying in something that I know was not good for my soul. And I just got like literal tingles, because I see a lot of women who will never lean into their potential because they're holding on to something so tightly that is not serving them anymore. And they're waiting for someone to meet them halfway, and this person is never going to meet you halfway. So not only were you willing to do the work and to really examine your life and your standards in those little micro habits of where am I self-abandoning? Where am I not speaking my truth? Where am I not advocating for myself? You were able to go into those areas of your life, and then also you were able to, because obviously you dated as well after, and you and I have very similar journeys where we date and we're like, oh, we have this great guy. Oh, that didn't work
the
out.
one that I got after was an even bigger lesson than the divorce.
Same. So,
but that was probably the biggest mistake of all. Not really, because it was the pattern breaker.
It's the pattern breaker. Mm-hmm. And also, like, God will show you, will present things to you that will look like, this is what I'm calling in exactly. Yeah. And then you're shown another side. And can you face up to that lesson? Can you look and be like, oh, no, that was not the right call. I need to, and again, choose yourself over choose what's familiar, right? Because so many of us are conditioned to choose what's familiar, even though it is so painful and it is so uncomfortable. And it's like that saying, I don't like this saying at all, better the devil you know. Mm-hmm. I've heard women say this in career. I've heard them say it in relationship. And I'm like, girl, no, definitely not that, right? You don't.
Every time you go into the devil you know, you cut off possibility.
Amen. Yeah.
Right? Because possibility exists in the devil you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be the devil, could be the greatest thing of your whole entire life. And I talk about this in the sense of believing in bigger. When did we stop believing in bigger? This mediocrity, this settling, and we know, and every time you and I are talking about this, I'm thinking the same thing, the same principle applies for nutrition, for exercise, for sleep habits, for relationships, for business, for self-care routine. It's like the exact same thing in every area of our lives.
It really is. It shows up in everything, and that's why I love talking about standards with you, because and I think both of us do this in our work, we are calling women forward to say, you were born to live a bigger life. Like, you did not come here to settle. You're here to feel incredible in your body. You're here to have a beautiful relationship with your children. You're here to be obsessed with your man. Like, I'm just not down for the, oh, like my husband, like complaining about your husband. Like, if you need to complain about your husband daily, why are you even with him? Relationship is supposed to be a net positive for both of you. It's like it's synergy. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2.
Yeah.
It should equal 3, 5, 10, 11, right?
Definitely.
So if you're in a relationship that makes you feel like you're contracting all the time, why are you in it? And I think that's one thing that we've always stood by with everything is we have incredibly high standards, and you have to if you want to be truly fulfilled.
I remember in the stages of me wanting bigger for relationships. And I remember when I went through that transformation and I left my husband, got a divorce, and then went through another cycle breaker. And I was like, well, no, this is not for me either. Right, next one. But I just remember having this dream, not an actual dream when I was sleeping, but a vision of what a healthy, conscious, loving, perfect. I believe that a perfect relationship is imperfect, and that's what makes it perfect. But I had this vision that it existed. And I remember talking to some of my girlfriends about it and them telling me I was crazy. And them saying to me, no relationship is like that. It's only like that in the honeymoon phases. And I would talk about conscious, healthy communication. I would talk about living healthy together, having the same routines and structures and rituals. I would talk about spiritual, personal, business development together. I would talk about that beautiful masculine, feminine balance where the respect and the adoration is there in the right quantities, and where the man is respected and admired and the woman is cherished and adored. And I had this vision, and we were both the healthiest, happiest versions of ourselves, and it was easy and it flowed. And my girlfriends told me I was nuts. And I went left anyway.
I love this because you had the audacity to dream it. And I've had similar conversations too, like prior to meeting Dan. And I even hear it sometimes with my girlfriends that are now single and like now they're, dating after having children, after, going through divorce. And they say like, where are all the good men? I'm like, stop right there. And here's why. You are an incredible woman who has done so much work on herself. You are so loving. You're beautiful. You take care of yourself. You are all these incredible things. Why would you not believe that there would be a male equivalent to who you are, right? Because we live in a world of opposites. So if there's any good women left, which we know there are so many incredible women, then we have to also believe that there are incredible men out there. However, and we always talk, point of attraction, if you believe that men are crap or that the good ones are taken or whatever you believe, then that's actually going to be your reality. You're just going to keep seeing it, and you're going to find evidence, and you're going to say, see, I was right. And I think we were both delusional enough to say, it's possible. It has to be possible, and looking at expanders of people we believe are maybe living a life like that or have the relationship that we would love to have, and using them as reference and really anchoring into that truth. And I also have seen online too where the couple looks like the perfect couple, and then, something comes out, there's infidelity or they're now breaking up, and people will jump on the opportunity to say, see, nothing's as it seems. See, all men are like this. And it's like you were looking, your brain was focused on evidence that was going to prove that to you, even though we have thousands of other relationships over here that are healthy, conscious, connected, so in love. You don't want to look at that because you would rather look at the evidence that's going to support this limiting belief that actually makes it easier for you. It's an easy cop-out to be like, yeah, all men are crap. Like, that's why I date losers.
Yeah, because it normalizes what we're tolerating, and it means that we don't have to lean into that pain. I always talk about the fact that one of the greatest human motivators is the avoidance of pain. It's such a strong motivator that to go into pain, to really go into the truth, the deepest, darkest truth of what we don't want to see, right? The magic lies in the work that we're avoiding. To go into that is to face the pain, to not avoid it. But the brain doesn't want to do that. The body doesn't want to do that. Yeah. And I
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you're not afraid to go into that pain, like, and it's like when you do your inner work, when you do your shadow work, when you're willing to see the parts of you that feel still wounded or that are easily triggered or holding on to old stories, when you can go into your shadow aspects, you are better able to explore the shadow aspects of the world, meaning you're not afraid to go into a relationship because, if you do end up dating a loser, you can handle it. You trust yourself enough. I actually think it's more about the self-trust. It's that if I think this man is incredible and I start dating him and then he shows me another side of him, I have no evidence to say that I'll walk away from this and I'll be trapped in another relationship. Whereas if you do the work first and then you get into a relationship and you see another side of him, you're like, oh shoot, this is not the guy that I thought I was signing up for, that you've built that self-trust to be like, I'm going to walk away. If he's not for me, I'm willing to walk away because I know I'm strong enough to do it on my own.
Absolutely. But it's coming back into where is that strength built? Where is that self-worth built? And I believe that it's built in our standards. And our standards come from our boundaries. Discipline doesn't just happen. We have to know what the benchmark is. We have to know what we're chasing. I love what you were saying about relationships. And as you were saying it, these belief systems, there are no good men out there. The same can be true in so many fields of health. We have a belief system that in perimenopause and menopause, we're just going to put on weight and we're just going to look a certain way and we're going to be tired and frazzled all the time. That's not true. I'm nearly 45. I feel amazing. Do I work at it really hard? Do I have incredible standards for my health and my body? Yes, but that's a limiting belief system that I refuse to accept.
I love this so much.
Right.
But it's so true.
Same.
I'm so glad you pivoted into that because it's so true. It can be applied to so many areas. I love your stories where you're like working out and stuff. It's so inspiring because you obviously, you look amazing, but you were going to look amazing anyway. But you're, again, taking radical responsibility for your body. And I've had the exact same thing. We were talking about it before. This is my third baby. I'm going to gain a lot more weight. And it has been true, which is also why I'm a lot more vigilant, which is also why I'm like, okay, let me make sure I'm getting my protein in the morning. Let me make sure I'm staying hydrated. Let me move my body. All these things because so many people have planted the seed in me that you're going to gain so much weight. It's going to be so much harder, etc. And the same thing too. Wait until you hit 40. Just wait until you hit 40. And I was like, no, I literally refuse. And I think there's people who will use that as, oh, well, I'm 42 now, so that's why. I actually see people who are like, yeah, when I was 20, I had a six-pack. This is what it looks like to be 40. It's like, no, that's not what it looks like to be 40. Your body right now is a result of your decisions and your standards for the last 20 years. Yes, when you were 19, you could have McDonald's after the club. You can't eat like that now and expect to have. It's an accumulation of all the things you have done, right? And so I agree with you so much because I'm very vigilant about how do I want to feel after I give birth to this baby? I don't want to feel like I'm so heavy and I've just let myself go. I just know that starting point is going to be painful for me. So I'm just doing the best I can to take care of my body so I'm not falling into that trap.
So you are then already the most perfect, healthy version of yourself in this pregnancy because you're doing that. But you've built that. I've been talking a lot about identity lately. And as I come through the final workings of my own identity work before we kick off the, this next year of the Fire Horse, I'm super into all of this stuff. But I've really been working so hard on identity. We were talking about visibility, showing up. You and I have done that work to build that identity as a woman who has standards for her body. Is it easy? No. Do we have to be more disciplined in our 40s? Yes. Do we become more insulin resistant and sensitive to carbohydrate? Yes, we do. So that means that we don't get to eat the way that we ate in our 20s and 30s, and acceptance is 90% of it. When we can accept that hard work is not pain, it's not, this is the exact thing that gets you to where you want to go, that discipline. You said something earlier that I thought would be so helpful in this space as well, is you said, I just don't do that anymore in relation to relationships. That's just not who I am anymore. I just don't do that anymore. I teach the same in the nutrition space, and people are like, oh, but I just want a little bit, or what about? And I'm like, when you embody the identity of the highest expression of yourself, you simply just say, that's not for me. That is no longer a part of this identity. It's not a conscious choice whether to have it or not have it. It's not coming from a place of desire and, oh, but if I just wait, I can have a little bit of it on Friday. It just doesn't fit.
Oh, I love that.
And the best way to get consistent with your health is to build a new identity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that because I speak a lot of on identity as well. And Dan and I, we're doing the best with our kids. And the kids, you know, they go to parties and everyone will eat a certain way. And we're very, I think people would say we're extreme in our home because of what we keep in our home and what their kids are allowed to eat. However, if they're at birthday parties and stuff, it's not like we say you can't eat the food that's there.
I'm raising teenage boys. Yeah. Like, you're in great hands with me. Like, I'm swimming up the river every day with this.
Exactly.
Right
it's like there's only so much control you can have, right?
Yeah.
But what I've been so proud of, and I'll give Dan the credit for this because he was the one that made these rules to begin with, is that our kids have been trained since babies that fast food is not real food, that it's toxic for your body. Like they'll even know like that there's plastic particles in that. They just know so much about what food is and what food isn't, that even when their friends or their family will say like, oh, KFC, and they're like, oh, that's not real food. And I'm so proud of that. That's their identity. We do not eat that food. We just don't have it. Like McDonald's, like they see it as this big, horrible thing. Whereas when I was young, McDonald's was this fun treat that you had. And I think the majority of families probably still have that view. Like McDonald's is this fun treat. Maybe you have it often, maybe you have it once in a while. But I remember it was something cool that you had, and you'd have the McDonald's fries and you have like the Big Mac or whatever. But my kids are programmed so differently. And that has become their identity. We do not eat that. We are a family that does X, Y, Z. And I think as parents, the more we know who we are and like build our own identity, not defaulting. My mom was like this, so therefore, no, creating our identity. This is my standards for relationship. This is my standards for my body. This is my standard for my appearance. This is my standard for my lifestyle, whatever it is. That when we know our standard, we can better teach our children. Because if you're living your life all haphazardly and you're just all over the shop, what chance are you giving your kids to have this more disciplined and empowered life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if there was one thing that I would really want people to take away from our story and my journey, is that generational health is everyone's responsibility. And I'm doing I can't change what happened to my boys, and I can't change some of the pain that they went through, and I wouldn't change the story and the journey that they went on. But I'm doing everything that I can within my responsibility and my power to make a difference for future generations. And the hardest thing in the world is getting our heads out of the sand. The hardest thing in the world is looking in the mirror and saying, I'm treating my body like this because my standards and self-worth are low. I'm treating my body like this because actually my life is so overscheduled that I don't have time to feed myself. I'm treating my body like this because I'm miserable in my relationship. I'm feeding that to my kids because I'm prioritizing work over nourishment.
So good.
So hard, so painful, and so difficult, but that is the turning point. And like I said, I was so shocked to my core to not be given healthy babies. It was such a beautiful wake-up call of how important it is for all of us to take that generational responsibility with health, with daily discipline, with relationships, stopping cycles of abuse, all of that. You don't have to do anything huge and radical. It's just those micro choices that makes such a difference, like you said, because you're building that identity for yourself, but for future generations, we're raising the bar. Every time you say no to that and you make a better choice, you're raising the bar for everybody, you know.
Oh, I love that so much. Jess, I have loved this conversation. I knew we were just gonna That's why I'm like, okay, let's come upstairs and like start recording. I think you just have so much wisdom and you've lived such a rich and full life. And I just want to acknowledge you for not just going through it and saying, you know, I've come out on top and been a victor, but saying, you know what, this is what I learned. This is how I can help others. This is what I'm committed to doing. I think that's super powerful. And I'm, so grateful to have you as a friend.
No, thank you, beautiful. Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure.